as I look around this room and think about this discussion in years past, been very focused on Vermont state leadership and the importance thereof. And that hasn't diminished any, but we now have a partner at the federal level in a way that we haven't seen ever. And so I want to take this moment quickly to thank the representatives of our congressional delegation in the room for the hard work that they did to bring resources to Vermont and every state around the country. It is incredible that we are talking now about what to do with billions of dollars in federal aid at a time when we have been fighting for hundreds of thousands of dollars in the state budget. So, round of applause for our federal delegation. All right, so thank you for that. Really appreciate you all being here. I want to quickly introduce our panelists. TJ Poore from the Public Service Department. Andrea Wright from the Agency of Transportation. And Megan O'Toole from the Agency of Natural Resources. Very excited to have them. They are going to do most of the talking and speak through what their agencies are doing, what resources are coming in, and we'll be able to get into that in a moment. There are a number of open questions that we'll see over the course of time as they talk about those resources. It's lovely to see those dollars, but they all come with different processes, different strings attached, and so helping to understand where and when those dollars will become available will be really important. And I also want you to be thinking about as we go through these, what's the scale of those dollars? They seem like large numbers, but where does that fit with the need? What do we need to see to be successful in our state and other states around the country? And does this answer the mail? And what else would we need? What is the policy work that needs to go alongside it? I also want to think about, sort of the end of the day is what are these investments going to mean for Vermont emissions? Where are we going to be standing at the end of this, the end of the bill and IRA money, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law or IIJA, and the Inflation Reduction Act? Where are we going to be standing at the end of this? What are we going to be looking at in terms of progress? We know from the Climate Council's work that business as usual wasn't going to get us there. This is going to move us a significant way, but how much is that going to be over the course of time? All right, I'm going to hand it off to our first, which order are we in? Megan.
All right, thanks very much. Good afternoon, everybody. I am Megan O'Toole. I'm at the Vermont Agency of Natural Resources in our very new Climate Action Office, which is within the Secretary's office at the agency. And I manage our climate change mitigation program for the agency. And I'm going to talk about one program that we're administering. TJ and Andrea are going to talk about many programs, but we're focused really heavily on one specific program in the Climate Action Office right now, and that is the Climate Pollution Reduction Grant Program. That is a very strong component of the Inflation Reduction Act and very significant in terms of climate change mitigation policy programs and opportunities, but very specifically in the mitigation space. So I just want to talk really briefly about some of the benefits that we anticipate from the Inflation Reduction Act as a whole body of law. There are many, many different programs that law has caused to be implemented, from federal tax credits to grant programs to other incentives, mostly to benefit emission reductions in the electricity sector, but it really does span across all sectors of the economy in terms of its impact. So recent modeling by the Rhodium Group has shown that we're expecting between 439 and 660 million metric tons of CO2 equivalent reductions by 2030 as a result of the Inflation Reduction Act. It's meant to lower the cost, the upfront cost, and the implementation of wind, solar, electric vehicles, building efficiency to all be more competitively priced with the fossil fuel technologies that we have in place today and are more familiar with. It expands the production capacity for manufacturing of cleaner technologies, and then it provides, and this is the opportunity that I'm going to focus on today, resources to states and local governments to develop their own unique climate plans apart from the federal government, and then compete for implementation funds to put those plans into action. All right. So, as I mentioned, this is one of many funding opportunities in the Inflation Reduction Act. The entire fund consists of $5 billion that will go to eligible government entities, and that is states, local governments like municipalities or our regional planning commissions here in Vermont, tribes and territories. And this is specifically to conduct two activities. One is to plan for climate mitigation, and the other is to implement climate mitigation in terms of specific emission reductions that we can see from those climate mitigation programs and policies. The Agency of Natural Resources is the lead implementer for the climate pollution reduction grants, and we were awarded just about a month ago $3 million to conduct the planning portion of the program. And the planning funds are specifically awarded to states to identify the shorter term mitigation priorities of the states, and we plan to submit that planning document to the EPA by the end of this year. And then the second phase is to develop a comprehensive mitigation plan, and that's due very conveniently in July of 2025. And I'm sure all of you are very familiar with the text of the Global Warming Solutions Act, which says that our update to our climate action plan is due on July 1st of 2025. So our intention is to align this planning funding with the update to Vermont's climate action plan. And so essentially, the deliverable for the more comprehensive plans due to EPA will be hopefully synonymous with the update to the Vermont Climate Action Plan. So this is a great opportunity to have a lot of the work that we need to do to update that plan funded through this planning grant. And then after the planning comes the implementation, and this is a competitive fund. The planning fund was a formula funded program, so that was pretty straightforward in terms of competing for that. We didn't really have to. But the implementation funds is going to be, it's a much more fierce competition. EPA only plans to award between 30 and 100 implementation grants for all eligible entities, of which there are thousands. So we are focusing right now on putting forward the most competitive plan that we can in the short term, and this is the one that's due by the end of this year, so that we can implement those shorter term mitigation priorities and really seize that funding opportunity. So our approach within the agency to identify our mitigation priorities is first and foremost to be competitive. So we want to consider EPA's criteria for their competitive funding opportunity, which they actually just publicized last week. So we're really in the midst of wrapping our heads around how we can put forward the best plan that is likely to be funded. But we need to meet 4 different goals. We need to demonstrate how Vermont is maximizing climate mitigation funding opportunities across all the federal programs, of which you'll hear from TJ and Andrea as well. There are many opportunities, and so we need to understand how we can beneficially stack those programs and make them all work really well together to meet our priorities within Vermont specifically. We need to demonstrate meaningful and measurable climate mitigation impacts. So we need to be able to quantify somewhat, precisely, or at least estimate what the emissions reductions are going to be from these specific actions. And there can surely be co-benefits to mitigation that we will look to identify as we identify these mitigation actions, like resilience and adaptation co-benefits, public health co-benefits, air pollution co-benefits, but we will need to engage in that exercise for all of the priorities that we put forward. We will be considering, obviously, direct benefits and maybe even disbenefits to low-income and disadvantaged communities as we identify what programs we want to put forward. And then EPA is really stressing that programs of the states that especially are a little further ahead, like Vermont is in our climate planning, look to fund programs that are replicable and can be scaled to be implemented in other jurisdictions so that we can continue to be a model in climate mitigation in Vermont. We're also looking to expand the scope and scale of impactful mitigation actions that are already underway in Vermont and really drive the advancement and implementation of programs across all sectors of the economy, especially where there hasn't been a lot of resources dedicated to specific opportunities so that we can drive change in some of the smaller sectors other than thermal and transportation, for example, the agricultural sector or the industrial emissions sector. So I just want to mention really briefly some examples of the actions that we're considering putting forward as priorities in our plan. And I'll just say that this is really coming from the actions that were adopted in Vermont's Climate Action Plan in 2021. We're obviously starting from that document to identify actions that haven't had much movement since that plan was put into place. We're looking to develop a purchase incentive program for medium and heavy duty vehicles, especially to pilot programs that can demonstrate the applicability and feasibility of emerging vehicle technology in Vermont. We've already done some of these. The electric school and transit bus program comes to mind. And we want to expand programs to help commercial and industrial entities mitigate emissions of hydrofluorocarbons, or HFCs, which are very high global warming potential refrigerants. So that would play into emission reductions in the industrial sector specifically. We want to fund actions that are advancing agricultural emissions reductions and mitigating emissions from that sector, from farms and farming practices, and also enhancing sequestration. We want to enhance the current services that are offered to help low-income Vermonters navigate the very long list of thermal efficiency opportunities and programs so that those opportunities can be maximized in terms of impact and cost reduction. And we want to implement and expand some programming that our Department of Forest, Parks, and Recreation currently implements to support additional carbon sequestration. And then finally, in the waste sector, we'd like to prioritize the expansion of infrastructure and educational programs for community and backyard composting and support the solid waste management entities in reducing combustion emissions from their facilities and the vehicles that they use. So compared to other states in the country, Vermont is really far ahead in terms of climate planning. We are speaking daily with other states that are implementing this program that are literally not allowed to say the word climate in their office. And I'm sure you can guess which states I might be talking to or talking about. And so they're really, they have no support. They have no resources. They are really starting from square one. And that experience alone has made me really value and appreciate all of the progress that we have made together in terms of the climate planning documents that we have in place. And I know there are many, but just notably, obviously, the initial climate action plan adopted at the end of 2021, and then the update to the comprehensive energy plan in 2022. And then, as I said earlier, we'll be looking to use this funding to look towards that update to the climate action plan due in July of 2025. So how are we looking to implement the climate planning funds? I alluded to this a little bit earlier, but we've been working with the Climate Action Office's newly created Interagency Advisory Board to review all of the 234 actions in Vermont's initial climate action plan. And we've created a comprehensive tracking tool for each climate action plan action. This is a living document that our state agency team has been working with to understand the status of each action and then identify which actions that have not yet been completed may need additional resources to be fully implemented, or which actions would really benefit from an expansion of scale or scope to see additional mitigation benefits in their sector. And of course, we have to, because of the mitigation focus of this grant program, prioritize actions that have that meaningful and measurable emissions benefit. In terms of next steps, we will continue to develop this priority plan and submit to EPA by the end of this year. We will be engaging in public review of the plan once it is ready for review. And of course, we'll be soliciting feedback, and we hope to do that this fall. And this is a plan that we must submit to EPA in order to be eligible to apply for the implementation funding. So it's really critical that we get this plan in on time and that it puts kind of our best foot forward in terms of seizing the mitigation implementation opportunity. We can compete for the implementation funding individually as a state or collaboratively across jurisdictions. So I think it'll be really important in the coming months to identify what other jurisdictions, either regionally or nationally, are interested in potentially collaborating on programs that could be implemented across jurisdictions. Beyond the priority plan, we will use the planning funding to update the climate action plan. So this includes technical, analytical, and operational needs associated with the update to that plan. And I know that the Vermont Climate Council subcommittees are already digging into this issue, especially the Science and Data Subcommittee, to determine what the technical and analytical needs will be to support the update to the climate action plan. And notably, we are also using this funding to support regional planning commissions and municipalities in developing and implementing their own local climate and energy priorities. We plan to incorporate those priorities as they exist now into our plan to EPA so that local governments can point to those priorities in our plan and then work with us during the implementation phase to get funding for their own unique local climate mitigation needs. And then finally, we'll be supporting the ongoing outreach and engagement activities related to not only updating the CAP in 2025, but the other climate work that we're doing across state government. And then just really quickly, I wanted to take an opportunity to just familiarize you all, to the extent that you're not already, with this new entity within ANR, the Climate Action Office. I've learned over the last year that it's actually a really big deal to create an entity within state government where it didn't previously exist. It's quite a heavy lift, but we've come a really long way in the last year. And I think most of you know our director, Jane Lazorchak, who unfortunately couldn't be with us today, but she is leading us all forward as we tackle all different aspects of climate change in Vermont. Marion Wools is our adaptation and resilience coordinator. Colin Smythe, who's here today, is our data and progress analyst. Brian Woods is with me in the mitigation section, doing our modeling and analysis work. And then our newest addition, Sophie Veltrop, and I have completely misspelled her name in this slide. I'm so sorry, Sophie. Sophie just joined us on Monday. She is our communications and outreach coordinator, and we're really excited to have her on board because, as you all know, communications and outreach are just so central to the climate conversation. So, and then we also will be hiring a natural and working lands coordinator in the coming months. So if you know anyone who might be interested in that opportunity, please keep an eye out. And we are at climatechange.vermont.gov. Thank you.
Okay, hi everybody. I'm TJ Poor, the Director of Planning at the Public Service Department. I am going to talk about the federal funds that are headed toward our office. And Peter mentioned that the numbers seem big. For us, they really are big. We have over $150 million that have been at least sent to our office to oversee and to distribute out to other organizations. Just to give you a context, our annual budget is normally about $15 million. On top of that, we're also applying for competitive grants going for several $100 million on top of that. And I'll talk about that in a little bit, but just to give you a sense of the context of what's going on with this federal money. We have American Rescue Plan Act money, ARPA, the Building Infrastructure Law, and then the Inflation Reduction Act, which you've heard a little bit about. And I'm going to go through and kind of take a whirlwind tour through all of the different programs. I won't get into the level of detail that Megan went into, but because there are a lot of them, but happy to answer questions afterwards. So before I do, it's like money is like falling from the sky, right? But we're also trying to catch it with two hands behind our back. And there's a lot of different. I want to set the context here because people are like, hey, the Inflation Reduction Act was passed. Hey, the building infrastructure was passed in late 2021. Where are those programs? Well, it takes time. Even the money that we are given through a formula grant, we need to apply for, and we can only apply for that after guidance has been given by the relevant agency. For us, it's usually Department of Energy. In one instance, it's the EPA. And so we wait for the guidance, then we apply, then we wait to get a response to our application that we know we're getting the money for, and then we have to actually access the money. So there's a big time lag here in when kind of you get the headline of big federal bill is passed. Excellent work to our delegation, as Peter said, and everybody who made that happen. But the answer isn't like the money's on the street tomorrow. And talk a little bit about that. There's also, in that guidance that I'm talking about, there's a lot of federal restrictions on the use, and those are for good purpose, right? They want to direct the money to where they want to direct it to, but that makes it that can make it challenging to design programs that meet it, and sometimes we run into barriers there and need to kind of reorganize ourselves. And then I just also want to note that the money isn't free. Most of the time there's a match required, so we need to find a match from whoever we're granting the money to, or from state government itself. And another way that money isn't free is like the enormous amount of resources that all the agencies put into applying for funds and going after it. And oftentimes it's with existing staff that we're not allocated to have staff. We can't spend the money that we've been allocated, but we still have to do the application. And so we have existing staff adding to that workload. And this is not a complaint at all. I just want to really set the context of, this takes time. And then eventually we can get the staff once we've been awarded the money or the application goes through, but it does take time. That graphic is about as clever as I get, so it's all downhill from here. Apologize for that. I should have ended strong. But so we'll start with the American Rescue Plan Act in March 2021, right? Height of COVID, a year into COVID. This is really COVID relief funding. But the administration proposed and the legislature allocated really historic amounts for energy spending, climate spending in Vermont in 2021, and then again in 2022 using this ARPA money. A lot of that, it's about $75 million of it were allocated to our department. A lot of that is for weatherization, which we're sending through our current weatherization programs, mostly through Efficiency Vermont, to focus on low-income weatherization. One of the barriers that I described before is that we had set up weatherization as, the legislature had directed this to go to weatherization. We had proposed it based on kind of initial guidance that the federal government gave. And turns out that weatherization wasn't an eligible use for these dollars. So there was I won't bore you with the details, but there was like some, revenue or money exchanges within the whole bureaucratic process that we go through. We were able to make it happen and still send the money to weatherization, but it was delayed by almost a year just because of that. And so these are example of some of so really good programs, weatherization dedicated to low income and moderate income Vermonters that really need these services, adding on to our Office of Economic Opportunity weatherization programs as well. And they are going to start to roll out soon. The initial $5 million has been rolling out, and this larger tranche of money will be rolling out soon. As part of that, though, just this year, we were, maybe because it's been 2 years, but we were able to be a little bit nimble this summer and propose in collaboration with our efficiency utilities that $10 million of this funding be reallocated for emergency relief for Vermonters who are low-income Vermonters who are impacted by the floods, and to support those Vermonters to, in replacing their heating systems that may have been damaged, but replacing them better, right? And to make sure that where efficient systems are going in. And so that was like across anybody who was involved in that really like put a lot of effort into making that happen, making it quickly. Peter had a lot to do with that as well, but wanted to just call out that is something that we were able to get accomplished. Other money, to support electric upgrades to low and moderate income homes. A lot of times you put an EV in or a heat pump, you need to upgrade your panel. And so that money is available through ARPA money. Again, this is tied to the weatherization money. So again, there was a delay there, but that will be rolling out soon. And $5 million to install heat pump hot water heaters. That was a EAN network action team. Thank you, David. Initiative, I think, and so ultimately $5 million was proposed for that, and we moved it here with ARPA money. There's more ARPA money. There's the Energy Storage Access Program to help low-income Vermonters and municipal buildings install storage. $10 million to affordable community renewable energy programs. That's increasing access to solar through mechanisms other than net metering to help low-income customers own memberships into solar units. And then some congressionally directed spending added to ARPA for what's called the School Heating Assistance for Renewable Energy Program, the SHARE program, often biomass wood chip units for heating in schools. So that was ARPA. Moving on to the Building Infrastructure Law, again, passed in November 2021, 2 years from now. I'll start at the bottom because we just received the award for the formula funding for $16 million of infrastructure upgrades to reduce the frequency and duration of electric grid outages. You think it's really climate adaptation here, right? So that's not an energy program necessarily, but it is, as we electrify, we want to make sure the lights stay on and homes remain powered. We have support for the BGS, State Energy Management Program, municipal energy projects to support what's called the MERP program, the Municipal Energy Replacement Program. I may not have gotten that acronym right. And then another $3 million in building infrastructure law funds for the state energy program, which our office runs. Some of that is for workforce training. Workforce came up earlier today. Innovation grants to regional planning commissions, energy committees, small utilities. We really want to help those who need the help the most to move forward. And we're using some of that money to support equity and engagement work. We're really trying to up our game on public engagement. So those were all kind of formula funding. The building infrastructure law also has competitive solicitations, and these are the ones where we have responded to or going to respond to. First, there's the Grid Resilience and Innovation Partnerships Program. That's the GRIP program. We submitted an application in February for $100 million for energy storage systems across residential, utility, and transmission scale storage applications. That will support dozens and dozens of megawatts of storage opportunity to help. I think EAN this morning put up that representative chart of kind of moving the load shape of when we electrify. This can help support that. Another $100 million, and $100 million is the low end of the scale. This one's a little flexible in the amount of funding, but to support the New England Clean Power Link. That's an already permitted transmission line from Quebec to Ludlow, basically. The one, if you recall, it goes under the Lake Champlain and across underground to Ludlow. $100 million to support actual development of that line. More clean energy delivered into New England. And then there's potential further opportunities for resilience and innovation grants. The opportunities we applied to last year was like kind of the first round. There are multiple more rounds coming, and we're working on other projects to keep getting money to Vermont. Finally, the Inflation Reduction Act, that was just passed last year. So we have really years till that money starts flowing. Directly to the Department of Public Service is almost $60 million for more weatherization through the homes program, and then for more point of sale rebates for appliances, high efficiency electric home rebates. There's another $1 million for contractor training. I think you'll see through a theme through all of these that we're trying to build in, and I think the federal government tried to build in support, because workforce is not only an issue in Vermont, it's an issue across the country. And support to develop workforce through apprenticeships, through support for businesses to get people to move here and to get people to enter the industry. And then we are applying, October 12th is the deadline for the Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. There's a Solar for All program that Senator Sanders was instrumental in making happen. $100 million we're going to apply for, and we're going to, the proposal is in three tranches, really, and all of them are intended to support more access to help low and moderate income Vermonters and those in disadvantaged communities actually access the energy transition and access solar. Some of that will be rooftop solar on single-family homes. Some of it is in partnership with VHFA, Vermont Housing Finance Administration, for both rooftop and community units to support affordable housing. And some of it will be through larger scale utility projects, building on the affordable community energy, renewable energy program that we are just establishing in order to allow memberships and access to ownership of portions of solar arrays for low-income customers. We want more people and those who haven't been able to participate in the energy transition to have access, and I think that's one of the main goals of the Solar for All. And we're really bullish on our ability to get this, to win this grant. And then finally, one thing that the federal laws all pass, or the Inflation Reduction Act in particular, there's tax credits available now. I think you all have heard about these probably, but really important to kind of moving the needle here. It's tax credits not only for heat pumps or vehicles or appliances that you may install in your home, but also tax credits for solar projects or energy generation projects and storage projects, which really reduce the cost, make it closer to an economic proposition, if not an economic proposition, for utilities to actually enter into contracts and move these projects forward. And so there's like this vast array of resources coming. It is a lot of work, and we're bringing a lot of money to Vermont and Vermonters. It takes time, and we're starting, ARPA is rolling out now, and as we move forward, these projects will continue to roll out, and we'll really see these laws help to, and the money that is coming to Vermont, start to bend the curve on kind of our energy consumption and our emissions. I think that's it. Thanks.
So as I said, I'm Andrea Wright. I'm the Environmental Policy Manager at VTrans. And I'm here to speak today about our policy and sustainability programming. So I just want to start out, this work really is cross-cutting in our agency. It goes into a lot of different programs and policy areas that are really dispersed throughout our agency. These programs that I have listed here all have a climate nexus to some degree, but also have other driving factors that really drive and support their foundation. So I am going to focus on the Environmental Policy and Sustainability Program. This overview will focus on what that program is bringing. It's a new program in the Policy Planning and Intermodal Development Division. We are focusing on all cross-cutting aspects of transportation and environment, but with a great focus on both climate mitigation and climate adaptation as the state looks to meet the requirements of the Global Warming Solutions Act, of course, and the related climate action plan, the comprehensive energy plan, and as we look to also implement the funding related to the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. We've got the Carbon Reduction Program, the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Program, and the Resilience Protect programs that we're working under. And so the slides that I have really are going to focus on those. I do, before we go on, just want to kind of reiterate what TJ was talking about and some of the challenges related to this funding. He mentioned the IIJ was announced in November of 2021. Many of the programs didn't have notice of funding opportunities or guidelines even. For quite some time after that. Some of the discretionary programs still don't have notice of funding opportunities out, so they're listed there as like, what are you people doing with this money? Well, we don't even know the guidelines that we have to work under. So we're waiting for those to come out, and it's been a bit of a challenge to gain momentum on some of the programs because of that. Another challenge is that each program has different guidelines, different eligibilities, differing match requirements. So federal and state match, how much the state has to put up or local entities have to put up. The funding flexibility, some of the programs allow some of the funds to be transferred into other programs. And so aligning all of these differing intricacies of these programs really is challenging to do in the most cost-effective way. Next slide. So I'm going to start off with the Carbon Reduction Formula Program. And Vermont is slated to receive $32 million over the program life. There's a variety of types of projects and programs that these funds can go to. Eligible costs can go to public transit, transportation alternatives program, congestion mitigation type of projects, even efficient street lighting and traffic lighting, all the variety of travel demand strategies that we have. They can go to deployment of electric vehicles and the charging infrastructure for those. And then also costs can go to the development of a carbon reduction strategy. So definitely a lot of alignment with different programs that these funds can go to with the climate action plan pathways and actions called for in that. But I do want to say $32 million seems like a lot of money for some programs. For transportation programs, it's not huge. And when you think about spreading it out across all those programs, it is limiting. So I just want to point that out. We've spent the last year working on a strategy that evaluates what our program projects will achieve, so what we already have in the queue and where that will put us, sort of setting the baseline, and then determining strategies that are available to us that can help us to close that gap. We have a draft of the strategy right now. We just shared it recently with our technical committee and our advisory committees. So we're waiting for the final input from them. We've had 2 meetings with them recently and received a lot of great input from both of them. So definitely our draft will become stronger with those, with that input incorporated. After that, we will go to our executive staff. Our executive staff of the agency hasn't even seen this yet, so we have to present to them and then on to Federal Highway for approval for that November deadline. So it's, you know, we're embarking on year 3 of this funding. We're looking at how we're going to get these funds out the door. Haven't spent any of the carbon reduction programs yet for the program for the intent that they're meant for. So we're just really in this challenging phase of determining how best to do that. There's a lot of complications that go along with that, and really understanding what we will get in terms of greenhouse gas reductions, but also other co-benefits like air quality, mobility, and health, and that's a really important consideration. We heard a lot from the public and stakeholder groups on those types of co-benefits and how we should spend the money that we have. I mentioned our technical and advisory committees. We had members from various state agencies, from the regional planning commissions, from the MPO. We had data experts from ANR, from UVM, and also from EAN. We held 2 rounds of 6 different stakeholder groups and public meetings, and we had a public survey. Representative Stebbins mentioned completing the survey. We had over 700 participants in that survey, which we were really pleased to see that. So working with stakeholders in the public on that. Okay, we can go to the next one. So our incentive programs, many of you I'm sure are familiar with our incentive programs. They've been around for a few years. All of our programs are income-based with greater incentives available to those with lower incomes. And here I just list them out. These are the programs that we have, the dollar amounts that have been authorized to date, and the money that is remaining in each of the programs. Electrify Your Fleet is a new program just authorized in the 2023 T-bill. I will say over 25% of all registered EVs have received a state incentive. And if you look at the numbers since we started the incentive program, it's roughly 40% that have been incentivized. And we're always looking to improve this. We have a lot of surveys that go out for these incentive programs. We have an optimization report that our consultant did, our administrator for the programs did, and always looking to help increase the effectiveness of the programs and really deepen the benefits for those lower income Vermonters. So in the 2023 session, we increased the amount of incentives under some of the programs. We increased the caps price for the vehicles so that there was more vehicles available through the programs, and we increased the income eligibilities. Next slide. There are several funding programs related to electric vehicle charging infrastructure. We have the NEVI formula program, Vermont receiving $21 million under that. We are required to submit a plan each year in order to access that funding. So every year we can't get those funds until we have an approved plan in place. So we've submitted 2 plans now. That program really is to create a network within each state and then also across the country so that there's fast charging and people can rely on that. We have the Charging and Fueling Infrastructure Discretionary Grant Program. The agency has submitted applications for both community and corridor grants for that. The corridor applications are really to supplement what we're doing under the NEVI program along the corridors, and then also looking at high traffic locations to bring more charging into places where there's more people, and looking at rural locations as well, because we know that those subsidies are really required where they're just not as likely to be going in the first place. For the community charging grant, VTrans worked with A&R Fish and Wildlife, Forest Parks and Recreation, and the National Park Service to bring level 2 charging to state parks and national parks throughout the state. And we are now awaiting the award of that announcement, probably somewhere around the end of the year. The third program was just announced last week, and that really is to repair and replace inoperable stations that are around. I think the reports that we have a couple of dozen throughout Vermont that aren't working, and this provides an opportunity to have station owners submit letters of interest to us, and we will put an application in on their behalf to get those repaired. It does come with reporting requirements, so we're interested to see how many people are interested in entering into that. They also have to come up with a local match for that. So we have not gotten any of this funding out the door yet, but that doesn't mean we're not getting stations out. We still are working with our Volkswagen settlement funds and state funds to get charging out through partnership with DHCD. And we just recently were approved, our contracting method for getting projects out under the NEVI program was just approved by Federal Highway in the last couple of weeks. And so we anticipate having a request for qualifications and a request for proposals going out by the end of the year. And we work really closely with ACCD on all of our charging infrastructure. We have an interagency work group, so it's ACCD, A&R, Public Service Department, and BGS on that. Next slide. So this is our map, our build-out plan, if you will. For the NEVI sites, the year 1 plan called for 15 sites along highway corridors. Year 2 plan calls for 9 charge hubs. So these will serve electric freight travel and or provide greater redundancy for the passenger vehicles with 8 ports. So essentially doubling the infrastructure in those areas. For the CFI sites, the corridor charging, we've got 14 additional locations along designated corridors, along with the 32 level 2 chargers at the state parks and national parks. So, you know, within the next few years, Vermont should look very different in terms of how easy it is to charge. Next slide. So that's our climate mitigation. Moving into climate adaptation, there's there's quite a lot that the agency is doing to meet this federal highway definition of resilience. We have emergency response and recovery, so our continuity of operations plan and our incident command systems that are activated during events. We do trainings for those when we have some downtime. We have design and engineering standards that we work closely with A&R on, especially after, well, really since 2000, but especially after Irene, to update our standards for structure width, and so that they cross and pass more debris during events, which is really often the cause of major flooding issues during events, is that the debris gets stuck on the bridge and then goes around it and causes issues. Planning and programming, we have resilience addressed in our long-range transportation plan. We have our asset management plan that also addresses resilience, and it's incorporated into our project selection and prioritization systems. And then we just have our, infrastructure investments. We've got our traditional funding for all of our structure and bridge replacements and slope stability type of projects. And then we have new funding also through IIJA and FEMA grants that we have that we're implementing. And so we work closely, obviously, with Vermont Emergency Management on a lot of this during our response, but also with A&R Climate Action Office in several ways to just ensure that we're really coordinating our efforts on resilience as it relates to grant reviews for other applicants. We participate in a grant committee, working on the state hazard mitigation plan together, and then addressing the climate action plan resilience actions as well. Next slide. Let's see. Okay, so the PROTECT program, it's a resilience program, and it was made to help make surface transportation more resilient to natural hazards. Through the support of both planning activities and resilience improvements, Vermont is programmed to receive over $37 million in this program. 2% of that is required to go to planning rather than implementation. The related guidance provides for state agencies to develop a resilience improvement plan. It's not mandatory, but if we do complete a plan and it's approved, then we get an increased federal match on the projects that we put the funds to. So we have decided to move forward with a resilience improvement plan. We are just finishing that up. The plan uses a weighted methodology looking at high-risk sites as identified in our transportation resilience planning tool. It uses our documentation from repeat damages from past storm events. It accounts for transit routes so that people can move. Even if there is an event, we're looking to make sure that those transit routes are very resilient. It looks at vulnerable populations. It looks at making sure goods can get to where they need to, making sure those routes are resilient, and it coordinates with other state planning efforts, all to come up with a prioritized list of locations throughout the state of where we should put these funds. And we partnered with the state climatologists on this, with Vermont Emergency Management, with the A&R Climate Action Office, and their Watershed Management Division, with the Department of Public Health and with BGS to develop that plan. Next slide. And then in addition to our traditional and recent infrastructure investments, we have a few FEMA grant projects that we're working on to really address specific highly vulnerable sites. We have a pre-disaster mitigation grant for the design and construction of flood resilience improvements at several sites along the Whetstone Brook and along Route 9 and the Marlboro-Brattleboro corridor. We have a BRIC grant for a scoping study of a rail trestle bridge in Barrie. And we have a pending grant from the Hazard Mitigation Program to stabilize a portion of Route 117 and also to enhance the floodplain along the Millbrook at its confluence with the Winooski River in Jericho, and we're partnering with the Vermont Land Trust on that project. And next slide. And so I just wanted to kind of show you what our small program is based on, but this traditionally has been a one-member team. With increased funding for the incentives program, we brought on another staff. And then with the federal dollars available, we have really ramped up, and now we have 5 staff members. I'm sure many of you are familiar with Patrick Murphy. He's leading our electric vehicle initiatives. He has Hillary Del Ross, who's also here, helping him with the EV charging. Ari Latanzi is working on sort of helping us do the administrative part of all these programs and working on, especially with the incentive programs. And then we have Otis Elms-Monroe, who is our environmental planning coordinator, really focusing on resilience and energy. So our group has only been together for 3 months, but really we're already seeing how much more we can get done with this added capacity, and it's really great to have that support from our administration to do so. We also understand the need for VTrans to bring all of its climate action and investments together and to be transparent about that. I think we're doing a lot that people don't know about. So we're working to build upon some existing dashboards. We have some dashboards, maybe you don't even know about them, and to tie them together more and specifically to show what we're doing on our climate performance. So that's in the works as well. And that is all I have.
All right, thank you to our panelists. I'm going to open it up to Q&A in a moment, but I get the privilege of asking the first questions. So we're going to start with Megan. So some of the federal dollars or this sort of our traditional challenges with some of our traditional funding as we sort of try to elbow our way to make the priorities of existing dollars expand further. Some of those federal dollars give us the opportunity to pursue new things. What is something that you see as a sort of intractable problem that we've looked at over the years that you see the federal dollars helping us to unlock?
So I think one area that we probably all have experience with, and I know a lot of Vermonters, especially from low-income and disadvantaged communities, struggle with, is navigating the multitude of programs that are available to support them in this energy transition and to also support other communities. And one need that we've identified, and this work is happening in Vermont already, but kind of on a smaller scale, is helping people navigate and maximize the opportunities that are available and using some of this funding to really take stock of the landscape of those opportunities that are available now and put a roadmap together for each particular objective within the energy transformation to assist people in navigating all of the various things that accompany making decisions about the way that you heat your home or the way that you get around your community or the way that you drive far away and then come back, and all of the infrastructure needs associated with supporting those transformations, because I think that it can be challenging for anyone to navigate those circumstances surrounding making choices about transforming how you use energy. And so really supporting people in making those individual choices and then maximizing the opportunities for that individual.
That's great. I love tying those things together. It's great, especially with various funding streams. It's going to be important for people to know how to navigate different things. TJ, I think it's very clear that you have the staff you need, the skills you need to implement all these programs tomorrow. Kidding. So short of making you say we need more staff, because that's a complicated thing, legislators, please be listening. They need more staff. What are the folks in this room, right? You've got leaders from around the energy space. You've got legislators, you've got congressional delegation representatives, utilities, get everybody here. What can we be doing to help smooth the process for you?
That's a good one. So I think it's, we're trying to do a much good job with engagement on these funding sources, and we're starting actually not with these funding sources. We're doing a really good job, I think, engagement on our electric sector issues. Aside from this, but that type of engagement has led me to believe that what we need to do for these funding sources is engage, and so what we really need is your participation in that. And so when we go out, and we will go out to ask what is the best way to develop this program, even the Solar for All program, we're going to have, for instance, those 3 tranches of programs that we're talking about, but there are a million details and a million partners to work with under those programs the timing of that opportunity didn't make us available to engage when in our application, but the first year of it is planning. And so when we go out to ask for help, it is kind of a call to action for all of you to actually engage, come with an open mind and ideas, and really working together to see how we can best meet our needs.
Thank you. And he also needs more staff. As a former state agency person, it's hard to say that. It's easy to say that now. It's hard to say that when you're sitting at the table. They need more staff. Everybody needs more staff. Andrea, my question for you, and this is going to be different than the one I told you I was going to ask you. I think it's going to be better. You described a real evolution within VTrans towards thinking about a lot of the climate change pieces holistically. I'm wondering what in your time, both in your previous roles and now in your current role, is most exciting for you as terms of how VTrans is thinking about its role in this process?
Kind of still getting used to wearing glasses, and I don't know which way to look. I can't really see you all without them. What's most exciting to me, for one thing, I'll start with our mission and vision statements. We had environment in there maybe a decade ago, and it went away from our mission and vision, and that was a little crushing from where I sat in different positions in the agency, but it's back. Environment and sustainability are back. So it's clear through the federal government, through state government, that we have support. We have certainly support from the director level where I sit, obviously with the creation of a whole new program and staffing that program, not just keeping it as a staff of one. So that is certainly very exciting to me. And then I feel like it's a changing time. I will say also we have a bike ped coordinator position, probably not the right title, but John Kaplan, who many of you probably know, he just retired a few months ago, and we are creating 2 new positions for that role. So we'll have sort of a policy and planning focus, and also more integration into design, which I think is something we hear a lot about with our complete streets and our multimodal highway design guide, how we can make sure that our roads are serving all people for all modes. So I think that's really exciting. And then just the opportunity to actually implement these funds. We've been doing a lot of planning for them, and now we actually have some money to put on the ground. I'm interested in that dashboarding that I talked about to show what we are doing with our investments and what we're getting from that, and to inform where we need to go from there, and what is possible within our agency and what else is needed.
All right, thank you all. And now I'll open up the room for questions. Oh, there are ones behind me. I should probably stand up so that I can read them. All right. It's a little blinding. Is there, let me think. This is kind of, Megan spoke to this. Is there a way to create a one-stop shop for customers, home business, to understand how to navigate, access this financing across all sectors with handholding? I think, Megan, it sounds like that's what you're interested in. Okay. You want to speak a little more?
Yeah, and there are certainly programs that exist on, I think, a more limited scale to provide those services, but I think it's limited to certain groups, and I think that a expansion of those services that target specific sectors of business, or individuals that have certain goals in terms of participating in the energy transformation, whether you're a fleet operator or a large business owner, just being able to go to a central place to navigate all of the various funding opportunities that you could avail yourself of, and how to best kind of stack them, or understand what the match requirements are and how that's going to impact your decision making. But one recent example that we all learned about at the Drive Electric Vermont stakeholder meeting a couple weeks ago was a specific initiative to help support fleet operators of heavy duty vehicles and how they can, navigate the funding that's available, and then also the really intense tech and technical support needs that are associated with making those decisions. That's a whole nother side of this, is not only getting the money, but then also getting the technical support to implement these technologies, because that is in some ways a heavier lift, and it doesn't do anybody any good when you give them money to make the transition and then say, good luck to you. So that's another component as well.
All right. TJ, we'll start with you on this one. Should more money be allocated to contractor training, considering the importance of proper heat pump installation? I think we could apply that to just about any technical service delivery.
Yeah, you absolutely could. Weatherization is the same thing, in any of those technical services. And I think there is a lot of money going to contractor training. The Office of Economic Opportunity through the Department of Energy is developing a training center, basically a contractor training center. That's not the title of it. I apologize, but to do just that, because it is critically important to have the job well done, or else it's almost not worth doing in the first place. Efficiency Vermont, through some of the ARPA funding, also is devoting funds to workforce apprenticeships. And so I don't know if it's necessarily more money. We have a number of programs. The Department of Labor also has programs, and it's maybe coordinating that funding and really making sure those programs are working together. Quality control on the back end is also important. So kind of having the ability to go in afterwards and just check on how things are doing, and check on those contractors who are receiving this vast amount of resources, right? Public resources, dollars, and not to punish them or anything like that, but it's really to help us improve the quality of the work.
Great, thanks. This is a question for everybody, but I think we know who needs to answer this. Does your team have the people capacity to get all these funds out the door? I see growing teams at A&R and a growing team at VTrans.
Well, I didn't list our staff. Our team is growing. I thought after you asked me that other question on what folks could do, we do have open positions at the department, and they're focused on implementing the clean heat standard, and they're grants managers positions, and there are other positions related to all of this funding. And so another thing you all could do is apply for those positions, right? But so yeah, we need the resources to do the work. Some of those will come once the federal money is in the door, and then we do have some money to kind of offer more positions. But it's really, in the meantime, it's contractor support, to help us with some of the things that we can't do in-house, and it is filling the ones that we have.
I'll just add quickly to that. We have a new program and new staff, but you could ask Hillary over there if she's bored at all. None of us are bored. There's so much work to do, and there's so many things that we want to do for Vermonters and get this money out the door. So you could always use more staff. There's always more that state government could be doing for the public.
Great, thank you. This question is about the sort of point of replacement. Most folks on the ground address HVAC issues at the point of failure. Do you have any thinking about how we can change those programs to meet that sort of immediate demand? And we have a bit of an example of it right now.
Well, I think the example you're talking about is the flood recovery program, where we were able to take some of the weatherization funding and direct it to those people who are replacing their heating systems, and to really improve upon that and reduce future energy use. I do think this question may be going to how do we refocus on getting people to retrofit, and I think we also have a lot of programs dedicated to that too. The funding levels are different, and perhaps greater when you do a retrofit. Kind of, nobody wants to make an investment to replace their boiler, 20 years before it's time to replace it, just by its natural life, unless they're really intrinsically motivated, right? If they're making an economic decision, they may say, wait. And so it's really designing the incentives and getting the right information out there in order to help people understand what the economic impact of that choice is. Once they make the choice, next year it is, hey, it's cash flow positive. And some of that may be some of the things that Secretary Pichak was talking about earlier in financial mechanisms, yeah, that may not be his title. I'm terrible with titles. Treasurer. Thank you. But to really help with financing, and so to really make those programs cash flow positive, and to make sure people can make those investments and benefit right away.
I'll just add that something that we realized when we were kind of taking stock of all the programming with ANR and understanding what programs currently have a direct, climate mitigation benefit or a co-benefit, is we were talking to the folks in our Waste Management and Prevention Division who administer an assistance program to folks whose heating oil tanks have been red tagged. And for folks that don't know what that means, it basically means that your fuel tank has a critical failure that's causing it to leak. And so there's a red tag put on the fill pipe, and a fuel supplier is not allowed to disperse heating oil into that tank. So that's a moment where a homeowner has to upgrade certain components of their heating infrastructure. And so we identified that as an opportunity to really take advantage of that captive audience, that is looking to make changes to their infrastructure, and to connect those folks with not just the contractors and the support that they need to change their fuel tank, but also make more, broadly applicable choices to how they heat their home, or do a whole system change, and how do we get them the technical expertise and the resources to make that change in that moment when they really have that need. So that's just one example of the connections that we're trying to make to find the audience that really could benefit from these programs.
I'll just add one more thing to that. Maybe it's not even directly answering the question, as I sort of forgot what the question is, but I think this speaks to the importance of the state being able to partner with different organizations to get the word out to people, so that they do understand the economic benefit of their choices. I think right now people don't believe that buying an EV or going to a heat pump is something that they can do. I think there was a great example in the EAN report about, a car, you could stack incentives and end up with a vehicle for $2,000. So I don't think people know about that enough. And so I think it's really, the state can do what it can through a press release, but to really reach the right people, partnering with, Capstone, Drive Electric Vermont, getting the word out, and just banging the drum over and over about how people can really benefit from the programs and the money that we have coming in.
TJ, this might be a quick one for you. Is there a community benefit agreement in place for the Northeast New England Clean Power Link?
So through their current certificate of public good, there is a couple of $100 million that would go to the Clean Energy Development Fund. And then there's also agreements with each town along the way on the land portion of the line for each of those communities to benefit.
Yeah, thanks. I think I know the answer to this. I think it's no, but do state agencies have a centralized support for federal grant applications reporting, or does this all fall to the individual agency? Yeah. And do you ever compete for federal funding? Perfect. State level coordination. Love it. All right, you're developing programs for the long term. So how do we address the fact that these programs are largely being created with short-term or one-time federal funds?
Yeah, it's a balancing act, right? Because we do want to get the money out as quickly as we can to help as many people as we can and have that benefit be as big as possible. Where we can, the department at least is trying to develop programs that can be sustainable. So I'll use the Solar for All application again. A good tranche of that money is looking to support that's why it's not all going to single family solar, is that when we have a larger project, we can actually support that investment and get funds back coming in to make it a more sustainable funding source. Use that money again over and over to kind of make that money from $100 million, maybe it turns into $150 million when it's used again. I think the weatherization repayment assistance program through VHFA and some of our Vermont utilities is another example of that, trying to make investments cash flow positive, but there is a payment that comes back through after an investment in weatherization. A payment comes back in to kind of reuse that money again for future investments. And so not all the dollars are going in that direction because it is a balance, and some of the dollars are restricted and you must use it here. The ARPA money has to be spent by 2026 and had restrictions that we couldn't have a long-term payment stream coming back. It couldn't be a loan. And so, it's a little bit of both.
Chair Coffey spoke to this earlier. Codifying the incentive programs in statute is one way to ensure that they will continue. We are looking like we're, with the current funding that we have, that will, on the programs that, based on the way they're designed now for our incentive programs, that we will run out of money in 2027. I guess it'd be a good problem if we run out before that, because that means we got more money out the door. And then our optimization report that was done through the consultant that administers those programs estimates needing $15.3 million more to be authorized to continue the program. So those are just some of the numbers that we're looking at.
Okay. I think this is going to be our last question, and I'm going to, and then maybe we'll open it up for any final thoughts from our panelists. The question is, could we consider regulations for the use of any of these funds to require that no new fossil equipment be purchased with them, including flood replacements? So I'll start with this. I think each of the pots of money were appropriated for specific purposes. And most of those were appropriated for specific purposes around replacing fossil fuel equipment with other things. The flood recovery piece is a little bit different. The conversation that happened at the emergency board and through the Joint Fiscal Committee was about helping Vermonters who could least afford to get back in their homes because they didn't have heating equipment. And many people, by the time the changes were made, had already made purchases. And so the question was, are we trying to make people whole and to allow them to be able to heat their homes, or are we trying to help solely drive the transition? A lot of the program development started with the idea of, how do we help people transition, right? This is the moment when you don't have heating systems in your home. What folks have run into is either they have made decisions because they're dealing with a lot, or they're talking to their homeowners insurance who are saying that you can't simply replace your central heating system with a series of heat pumps. That's not allowed for our insurance company. There are all sorts of things that folks had to navigate along the way, which is why in these programs, for example, there are opportunities to both replace your, to sort of cover the difference in your traditional heating system, and to provide some level of supplemental heating, either through a heat pump or a pellet stove or something of the like. So I think the flood recovery is a little bit of an anomaly. It's a heating and basic appliance system, assistance program, but it's really about trying to make sure that we can help Vermonters be warm this winter. I don't know if folks have anything to add to that.
Yeah, I think you answered it well. I just add that most, most of the federal funding that we're receiving anyway is dedicated to low income and moderate income Vermonters. And so if we were to dedicate money to weatherization, for example, I think we'd be hard pressed to say, also you must take out your working boiler and make an investment in a new boiler. Maybe if we were going to pay 100% for that, but then that's also a balance. Do we have more bang for our buck if we do the weatherization in more homes and hit more people and help more people, or all in one home? And there's a balance. I keep returning to that, and so it's a broad policy question on kind of the regulations we want to impose on Vermonters and how they'll react to that. But there's a lot of considerations that go into it.
Great. We are about over time, but I just wanted to open it up to our panelists to offer any closing thoughts.
I guess just really briefly in response to the last question, I think it's the broader question is critical. How do we move the needle on climate change? Is it via incentives to encourage people to make these choices on their own, or is it, more of a regulatory approach? And what is the appropriate point of regulation? Is it the individual? Is it a fuel supplier? Is it a major fossil fuel company? Where does that where is it more appropriate, and where is it more effective and efficient for that point of regulation to lie? And I think that's a question that we as regulators and policy designers wrestle with quite frequently. But a lot of things that we're talking about today are very incentive based, looking for people to make those choices voluntarily with these with the different levels of support. So I think that's really the focus of these opportunities.
Can I have a warm round of applause for our panelists, please? All right, Jared.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, TJ, Andrea, and Megan. I feel really lucky as a member of the Vermont Climate Council. I get to work frequently with many of our state staff. And TJ, Megan, and Andrea are some of the most thoughtful, dedicated public servants in the state. Thank you for sharing this really important information with us, for taking the time. I know that there's a lot there, but this really is a generational opportunity to really take full advantage of. So thank you for leading that work. And I want to just go back to what Peter started with, which is a real specific thank you to, we have here with us today Thomas Renner from Representative Becca Ballant's office, Rebecca Ellis, please stand up, from Senator Welch's office, Haley Perrow from Senator Sanders' office. They and the congressional team in Vermont has done so much to make all of this possible, so thank you. Thank you for being here.